everyone, it's Sally here from Minerva. I hope you're all doing really well. I'm really excited to be here today to share with you a lovely sew along for a really popular pattern, and that is the Tilly and the Buttons Pearl Cardigan. So if you've not seen the Tilly and the Buttons Pearl Cardigan before, I'll pop an image in here so that you can see it really clearly, and I've also of course got the pattern here to show you too. So the Pearl Cardigan is a really lovely V-neck style wrap cropped cardigan. It has a lovely tie detail here which you tie up at your waist, and it also has 3 different sleeve style options as well. So the Pearl Cardigan is really great for wearing with high-waisted jeans, high-waisted trousers, and it's a great one as well to wear as a cover-up over, say, a maxi dress or a lovely floaty skirt in the summertime as well. It's a really good all-rounder pattern, I think. So there are 3 different sleeve style options that you can make with this cardigan. You can have a normal sort of long sleeve with a cuff like the model is wearing here on the front of the pattern image. You can also make a short sleeve style which also has a little cuff as well, which I think is a really pretty detail. Or you can make a lovely balloon style sleeve which is really nice and poofy and gathered at the cuff, and I think that is a really pretty style as well, and it just makes it that little bit more dressy if you did want to dress it up for going out or for a wedding even or something like that. So the Pearl Cardigan sizing ranges from a Tilly size 1 up to a Tilly size 10, and that is a UK size 6 up to a size 24. Or a US size 2 up to a US size 20, or a European size 34 up to a size 52. And the bust measurements for those sizes range from a size 76cm bust up to 122cm, which is a 30-inch bust up to a 48-inch bust. So this pattern is actually designed to be sewn from a knit fabric, so it's a really lovely cozy style cardigan to wear. And the best type of knit fabric that you can use for this cardigan is one that has a slight drape to it. So they suggest a medium weight drapey knit fabric with at least a 20% stretch to it. So you can use a sweater knit, a jacquard knit, a stretch velvet, a ponte, an interlock, or a lighter weight French terry, which would be really nice and cozy as well. So lots of different fabric options there. So for the version that I'm going to be sewing up today, I'm going to be using one of our Minerva exclusive sweater knit fabrics, and it's this really lovely brushed sweater knit in a brushwork design, and I absolutely love the colours in this. So there is a beige background, and then there's a really lovely abstract style print brushwork design all over in a black and a cream colour. And I think this almost looks like an animal print. I really love it, and it's a really cosy brushed sweater knit as well with lots of drape to it. As you can see while I'm holding it here like this, it's really lovely and drapey. I also have some stay tape here which we'll need to use to stabilise the neckline, which I'll talk about later on in the video, and some lovely matching thread as well. And I think this colour of thread will look really nice against the background of this fabric, so I'm really excited to get this pearl cardigan sewn up. So I'm going to be making a size 3 of the pattern today, and just in case it's interesting or helpful, I will put my body measurements in the description below this video, just in case you want to use them for comparison and to see how I worked out what size to make for myself. And you might also be able to tell that I'm wearing a pearl cardigan today, and this is the first pearl cardigan that I ever made, and this was made in a size 3 as well. So when it comes to deciding which size you're going to be making with the pearl cardigan, obviously it's best to go on your actual body measurements, but I always think it's a good idea to check the finished garment measurements as well, just to check that the garment is going to come up to the size and shape that you want it to. When I measured myself and I checked the finished garment measurements, I realised that the pearl cardigan was going to come up a little bit too cropped for my liking, so I actually decided to lengthen all of my pattern pieces by 1 inch all round, just to give me a little bit of extra coverage to be able to wear it comfortably with the jeans and trousers and things that I really wanted to wear this cardigan with. And that's a really simple, easy change to make, and I'll just talk through briefly how I did that a little bit later in the video. Of course, the beauty of the pearl cardigan is that it is that lovely cropped style, so you may not want to change it at all. It's entirely your own preference and how you will feel in the finished garment, but that is a slight hack that you can make if you want to, just to change the pattern to suit it to your needs. Today I'm going to be making the balloon sleeved version of the pattern as well, which I think will work really nicely in this lovely drapey fabric. As you can see from the version that I'm wearing today, I'm wearing the balloon sleeve version, and I absolutely love how you get this lovely sort of drape around the cuff here, and I just think it just looks so pretty. So I really wanted to make the balloon sleeve version again today. So another slight change that I made to the pearl cardigan that I'm wearing today was actually to lengthen the sleeve as well by 1 inch, and I feel as though that gives me a really lovely sort of pooling drape to the cardigan here at the wrist. That's also a really lovely simple hack that you can make if you also want to have that lovely sort of drapey pooly effect. So I'm going to get on now and cut out my pearl cardigan, and I will catch up with you as I go along. So I now have all of my pieces cut out and ready to go. So we've got a sleeve piece here, 2 front pieces, my back piece which is cut on the fold, and then all of the pieces that we'll need for the neckband and the hembands, the ties and the cuffs. I've cut these out and kept the pattern pieces on top of them for now, because it does feel as though you're cutting a lot of rectangles when you come to cut out this pattern. So I find it helpful to keep all of the pattern pieces on top of the different rectangles so that I know exactly which piece relates to which. So the pattern piece for the front, back and sleeves all include a lengthen and shorten line, which is marked here. If you do want to lengthen or shorten your pattern, you'll need to slice through this line here. And if you do want to lengthen your pattern, once this piece is cut in half, you'll then need to insert a piece of paper or something to the extra length measurement that you require. So mine was 1 inch. So I inserted an extra piece of paper here. And then once your piece of paper is secured in between that gap, you then just need to redraw the lines of your pattern and then cut it out accordingly, so that once your piece of paper is inserted and you've redrawn your pattern, you should have a pattern piece that is lengthened by 1 inch. Don't forget, of course, that if you are making any adjustments of this kind, if you are shortening the back and front pieces of the pattern, you'll also need to lengthen or shorten any corresponding pattern pieces. So for example, for my lengthened pattern, I needed to make sure that I'd lengthened my neckband as well, because my front pieces were lengthened by 1 inch at each side, so also my neckband needed to be lengthened by 1 inch as well. The first thing we need to do for our pearl cardigan construction is actually to stabilise the neckband, and to do this I'm using a fusible iron-on stay tape. So it's really important that we stabilise the neckline around here at the back of the neck, and also the front 2 pieces. So the line of the front here is actually cut on the bias, and that means that it could be prone to stretching out really easily. So it's important that we stabilise these neckline pieces just to make sure that no stretching occurs, so that when we come to fit our neckband piece, it should all fit in nicely. We want to place a piece of stay tape here and here. And you want to press that on with a hot, dry iron. So there's my stay tape all nicely fused to my main pattern pieces, and once that's done you can just go ahead and trim any excess tape that there might be on your pattern pieces. So now it's time to get sewing. The first thing we need to do is sew the shoulder seams. So we want to lay our back piece with the right side facing up and our front 2 pieces with the right sides facing downwards, and then either pin or clip the shoulder seams together, matching the notches. So once once we're all pinned or clipped together, we can go ahead and sew the shoulder seams. You can either sew on an overlocker or you can use a regular sewing machine. If you are using a regular sewing machine, just remember that you do need to use a stretch stitch such as a zigzag or a lightning stitch to make sure that your fabric will move and stretch accordingly, because we are using a knit fabric today. You can then give your seams a nice press towards the back of the garment and trim off any threads or overlocking threads to neaten everything up. Next, we want to take our neckband pieces, and those are the pieces with the pointy end. We need to sew both neckband pieces right sides together at the short edges in the middle, and that will be your centre back neckband seam. Once you've joined your neckband pieces in the middle, we then need to fold the whole neckband in half with the wrong sides together and press that neckband in half. So here's my neckband all neatly pressed in half, and you can see the angled bottom part there, and that should attach nicely to the front of our bodice. So now we're going to go ahead and attach the neckband to our bodice, and we need to do that with everything facing right sides together. So where the seam is in your neckband piece, that should match up with the centre back middle of the neckline on the back of your bodice piece. So you need to match that seam up with the notch in the middle of your centre back piece just here. So you see my notch here, that wants to match up nicely with the seam of your neckband. So once everything's matched up, we just want to align the raw edges of the neckband and the raw edges of the bodice pieces. Make sure that your shoulder seams are facing towards the back of the garment, because we've already pressed those nicely in place. And you just want to pin everything together, or clip everything together if you prefer, and you want to make sure that everything is matching up nicely. So you want to make sure that the bottom edges of the neckband are lining up really nicely with the corners of the front of your bodice, like this. So you will have this sort of angled piece here hanging over, but don't worry about that, that will sort itself out later on. You can then go ahead and sew your neckband in place. Next, we're going to move on to our sleeves, and because we're doing the balloon sleeve version this time, we need to run some gathering stitches along the bottom edge of our sleeve here, and that's what we're going to use to gather the sleeve into the cuff a bit later on, and that will give our lovely balloony bottom sleeve. So to run a gathering stitch, you need to set your sewing machine to the longest stitch length. Mine is a number 5, and you need to sew 2 or 3 rows of gathering stitches along the bottom of both of your sleeves, and you need to start and finish those 2 lines around 1.5 centimeters away from the bottom of your sleeve edge. So there are my gathering stitches, all run along the bottom of the sleeve line, and we'll use those for gathering up the balloon sleeve a bit later on. Before we do any of that, we actually need to attach the sleeve heads into our bodice. So you need to lay your bodice out right sides up, and you need to find your corresponding sleeve heads. So remember, we made some notches in our sleeves. We've got the double notch here which marks the back of the sleeve, and then we've got the single notch here which marks the front of the sleeve. So you need to lay your sleeve on top of your bodice armhole right sides together. You'll also have a centre sleeve notch here which you'll need to place on top of your shoulder seam, and you need to pin that together or clip that together. Next, match up your single notch of your sleeve to your single notch in your armhole and pin that together. You then need to match up your back sleeve notch and your back armhole notch and just pin or clip that one together as well. Then you can match your sleeve end with your armhole end and pin that. This will just make sure that we get the stretch nice around the shoulder edge of the cardigan. So once all those notches and edges are matched up, we just need to go ahead and pin the rest of the sleeve in neatly. Just making sure that your edges match up and all of your notches are together and there aren't any puckers or anything happening on the underneath or the overside of your sleeve. You might need to slightly ease some of your sleeve in if you do find that the curve of your sleeve is not quite matching the curve of your armhole. Once everything's pinned in place, you just need to sew or overlock the sleeve head into the sleeve armhole with a 1.5 centimetre or a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once your seam head is all sewn in, you need to press your seam allowance towards your sleeve. Next, we need to join our sleeve and our side seams. So we need to match up the seams of the sleeve. And you want to make sure that the seams of your sleeve are actually facing towards the sleeve. And then you can match up the notches in the bodice side seams and pin those all together down here. Just make sure that your gathering threads that we sewed earlier are out the way of those side seams so that you don't end up sewing over any of those threads, or we won't be able to pull those up later. Once everything's all pinned in place, we need to sew the side seam right the way along the sleeve seam as well. So now we can see that the cardigan is beginning to take shape. The next thing we need to do is actually to insert our sleeve cuffs onto the bottom of our sleeve. So remember earlier we ran those gathering stitches around the end of the sleeve. Well, here's where it all comes together. We need to make up our cuffs and then attach our lovely puffy balloon sleeve into the bottom of the cuff. So take your cuff pieces, and you'll remember that when we were cutting out, we cut a double notch to either side of the cuff. What we need to do is actually fold the cuffs right sides together and sew along the long double notched edge of your cuff. You want to fold your cuffs in half with the wrong side together, matching up the cuff notches that we marked when we were cutting earlier, and then give them a little press so that they sit nice and flat. So this next part can be slightly tricky. We now need to gather in the balloon sleeve to our little cuff here. And you can see that there's quite a size difference between the cuff and the bottom of the sleeve at the moment. So what we need to do is, I like to mark the centre of the sleeve. So to mark the centre point of the sleeve, you just need to fold the sleeve in half with your centre sleeve seam here, and mark the other half of your sleeve here with a pin. This will just help us to make those gathers nice and even. So when it comes to the gathering, you can either pop your sleeve cuff over the sleeve first and then gather. I prefer to do the gathering first and then attach the sleeve cuff over the top and distribute the gathers accordingly. So if you're going to be doing the sleeve gathering my way, start to gather now. So pull up the two long ends of the gathering threads that we ran on our sewing machine earlier, pull them up as tightly as you can, starting at one end and finishing where we placed that pin earlier. Make the gathers all nice and tight so you can see there that the balloon sleeve is starting to form. Take one of your folded sleeve cuffs and place it over the top of those gathers. So you want to make sure that you're matching up the sleeve seam and the cuff seam here. So we want to match up those seams, the seam of the cuff and the seam of the sleeve. You can just place a pin or a clip there to hold it in place. Next, I'd just like to match up the other end, the other centre point of the sleeve that we marked earlier. So here's my pin. I'm just going to go ahead and match that up with the notch on the sleeve cuff that's already marked for us. And place another pin or a clip there. Now I've found with my sleeve that actually gathering as full as is possible is actually about the right size of the cuff. But if you do need to adjust your gathers at all, just to make them a little bit neater, you can do that now. So just make sure that they're all nice and even. And then pin or clip your gathered sleeve bottom into your cuff. Once everything's pinned in place, you just need to overlock or stitch right around the edge of the cuff. Once everything's all overlocked in place, you can turn your cuff to the right side. And you can see that we've got a lovely balloon sleeve there. And then you can remove your gathering stitches. Next we're on to the waist ties, and if you remember from earlier, we have one very long left waist tie and one shorter right waist tie. So just make sure that you've got the right pieces with you. What we need to do then is to fold our ties in half lengthways. And sew all the way along one edge of the waist tie and down one short edge. We've overlocked or sewn our ties together, we then need to turn them through to the right side. So this can be slightly tricky. The easiest way I find to do it is actually to do it over a knitting needle or a chopstick. So full disclaimer here, I could not get my ties to turn through using my usual knitting needle method, as the fabric was so stretchy it just wanted to stretch itself over the knitting needle. So instead I decided to chop off where I'd sewn the short end of my tie and have it open, and instead use the safety pin to pull one end through to the other and turn the tube the right way out. Using this method just meant that I needed to neaten the end of the tie by hand, just by folding in the raw edges and hand sewing them together. So if you find the same, this is another method that you can use if you're having trouble using the knitting needle or chopstick method. Next we're going to work on the waistband, which is actually almost the final part of the cardigan. So you will have your back waistband piece, which is the smallest piece of waistband that we have, and it should have 4 notches along each side. So we need to lay the front waistband pieces over the back waistband pieces, right sides together, and pin those in place. So on the left hand side of the waistband piece, we can go ahead and sew together this side seam here, just at a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance or 5/8 of an inch. You can either do that on the overlocker or the sewing machine, as we have been doing. This side of the waistband piece, we need to leave a gap between the notches here. So this side needs to be sewn on a regular sewing machine using a zigzag stitch or a stretch stitch, and we need to leave a gap in between where the notches are cut into the side seam, because that's going to be where our ties are threaded through. Can you see that I've zigzagged from here to here, left a gap between where my notches are there, sewn again in the middle there, and left another gap where the second notches are, and sewn to the end. So it's really important that we just back tack at the beginning and end of these gaps, because this is going to be where your ties thread through. So we want those to be nice and strong. So next, what we're going to do is strengthen those holes here where your ties are going to thread through from the inside of the garment or the inside of the waistband, and that will create a really nice, neat and strong finish. So what we want to do is to fold the waistband in half lengthways. Make sure that your seam allowances are open like that, and you'll then find your gap here, and this is where your tie is going to thread through. And then what you need to do is open the waistband here, grab your seam allowances. You can see that the waistband is still folded in half. Your seam allowances here are folded together. So you want to pinch those two seam allowances together and hold them like that, and just pin here. And then what we need to do is zigzag across this gap here, and then that will strengthen the gap from the inside. Make sure that the rest of your waistband is away from where you're going to sew, so you just want to zigzag across this little notch gap here. So you can see that we've just secured that seam allowance there, so that will just strengthen all of the wear and tear that hole is going to get from the tie being pulled through. So if we turn the waistband the right way out, we've got our little hole there. Next we want to grab our ties, and first of all we want the longer tie, and we're going to pin the raw edge of the tie right sides together with the notched edge of the left hand side of the waistband. And you want your tie right in the middle of that notch. Pin that in place there. And then we want to take our shorter tie and pin that one right sides together with the notch on the right hand side of the waistband. So you'll have another little notch here on the right side of your waistband, and you want to pin the shorter tie to that one. Pin them right sides together with the seam allowance of the tie facing downwards, like that. And then you want to zigzag the ties to the edge of the waistband. So the ties are all zigzagged on now. So next you want to fold your waistband in half lengthways, making sure that your ties are all enclosed. So you want to fold the short edges of your waistband in half, making sure that your ties are enclosed as well. We then need to pin across this short edge and sew that closed. Once you've sewn along the short edges of your waistband, you can turn everything through to the right side. Once you've done that, you need to press the waistband in half and make it all nice and neat. Next, we need to attach our waistband to our cardigan bodice. So to do that, we need everything lying right sides up. You need to have your longest tie matching up with the left side of your bodice. Once everything's matched up, you need to go ahead and clip or pin your hemband right along the bottom of the bodice. Match up the pointy part of your neckband with the corner of your hemband. Once everything's pinned in place, you can sew your waistband onto the bodice of your cardigan. You might find that when you've sewn your waistband to the bottom of your bodice, you get this little bit here where it's not matching completely neatly, and it does say in the instructions that you can actually secure those over with a few hand stitches just to neaten it all up. You could even top stitch down here to make it neater as well. Once you've neatened everything up, the last thing to do is just to secure this opening here, and we can do that by just running a little bar tack across the top and bottom. Or the other thing you can actually do is just sew right around the opening of the hole as well, and that would secure it nicely, just to make sure that it doesn't suffer too much with wear and tear with that tie running through it all the time. So I'm just going to do that now. So I've just given everything a really nice press over, and I've pressed the waistband really nicely so it's laying nice and flat. Something that I decided to do, which the pattern doesn't necessarily tell you to do, is just to fold over and top stitch down these waistband bits here because I found that they were sticking out slightly. So I literally just tucked over what was sticking it out and I top stitched down the edge, and I feel like everything is sitting a little bit neater now. So if you find that as well, it's absolutely fine to do that, and I just feel as though the waistband is sitting much nicer now. So everything is all done, all pressed and finished. I'm really pleased with how this is looking, so I'm going to pop this on now and I'll show you how the finished thing looks. So here I am in my finished pearl cardigan, and I have to say I'm so pleased with how this turned out. I really love this fabric and I think it's worked perfectly for this pattern. So it has a lovely drape to it, this fabric, so it's worked really nicely with these balloon sleeves here. And yeah, it just feels really nice and really comfortable to wear. So if I just stand up, I can show you the finished length of my cardigan with the changes that I made to it. So you can see that just by adding that extra inch, the cardigan on me, it comes down to the top of the waistband of my jeans. And I'm really pleased with that because that's exactly where I wanted it to fall. If you didn't want to make those changes, then the cardigan would be slightly more cropped, but I think that works really nicely with high-waisted jeans and trousers, dresses and skirts and things like that. So it all depends really on how you want to wear the finished cardigan. If you do have any comments or questions on the sew along today, then do pop them below the video and I'll do my best to get back to you as soon as I can. And if you aren't already part of our Minerva community, it's really quick and easy to sign up for your own Minerva profile. As soon as you're signed up, you can start sharing your own makes, and you can also follow other people, save fabrics and patterns and inspiration for future makes, and just start chatting really with other lovely sewists in our Minerva community. If you'd like to follow me personally over at my own Minerva profile, I'm Secret Life of a Seamstress, and I'll put my details down below so that you can pop over and follow me if you'd like to. Of course, as always, I will tag the pattern and all of the fabrics and notions that I've used today in the description below this video, so that if there is anything that you want to take a further look at, you can pop over and do so. Don't forget to follow the hashtag Minerva TV and hashtag Sewalong for more lovely inspirational sew-alongs and videos from us here at Minerva. So I think that's it from me today. Take care everyone, happy sewing, and I'll look forward to seeing you in another video soon. Bye!